Spiritual Fitness podcast. I'm back again with another episode, and I'm so happy and so grateful to be here because I have a phenomenal guest. We just met a few weeks ago through a client of mine's, and she is just this amazing soul. Uh, just such a leader and a catalyst. She's a keynote speaker. She's so spiritual, so tuned in and tapped in, and a self advocate for those who want to help themselves through spirituality, through life, through trials and tribulations. And I want to welcome to the podcast, Spiritual Fitness Podcast, Lindsey Mazza. Lindsey, welcome to the podcast. How are you? Before we got on air, we were just talking about astrology, numerology, our life, and this is going to be an incredible episode. Thank you for being here. How's your day?
Thank you, Eric. I'm so excited to be here. Day's going well. It's a little bit later here. It's about 3:15 my time. So yeah.
I love it. Well, let's get into it.
Okay.
To people who don't know, just give them a brief synopsis. From my doing my due diligence, I know you come from a lawyer. That's your
hmm
background. You not recently or just recently transitioned into, spiritual world of just helping people find themselves, because as a lawyer, you're advocating for people. So what type of law did you study and work in, and what was your path before you got into this space that you're in today?
I was a family law lawyer for about 11 years. So dealing with, people's hardest points in their lives, separation, custody, their kids. And I went into law because an important part of my background is that I was born with a physical disability. And that was something that I never acknowledged, never wanted to talk about, and just worked harder, put my head down, thought I'll just do the thing, climb to the top. And because advocacy was just an inherent part of how I had to live, advocating for myself, I thought, okay, I'll advocate for other people. And that's how I got into law. I was good at my job. Was a lawyer by the time I was 26, worked at a large firm, and then at 29, quit to open up my own practice with 5 business partners. And we grew it from a small, one room office. And then we took over the whole floor of our building and had presence in multiple cities. So by the external
Wow.
world, very successful, but I was miserable. Right?
Talk about that.
Miserable.
Why is
Yeah.
there such a commonality in the corporate sector, just in general? I feel like in these times we're living in.
Yeah. So I think, and being totally honest, I was so miserable to the point where by the beginning of this year, I was waking up in the mornings thinking it would be easier to be dead than to
Mm,
face the day.
yeah.
And when I shared that with colleagues of mine, I thought I was being super vulnerable, uncovering this revelation, and they nodded back at me like, yeah, us too, Lindsay, we're like that. And I
Wow,
was
they
like,
did?
yes, like
Wow.
this is normal.
Whoa.
Right, right. And I was shocked. I was at a law event and, we're standing around and I'm like, guys, what? Like, that's not living, right? That's not how we're supposed to live each day. Can't we strive for something more than that?
Mm.
And yeah, it's become normalized. It's almost like you can't be happy and be textbook successful.
Damn, who created that formula? Yeah, and
Yeah.
it's so fascinating when, you can be vulnerable with someone and then they share their vulnerability and you're like,
Mhm.
oh, we're both in the same space.
Yeah.
How did this start? Where did this come from? To people listening, Lindsey is such an incredible soul. Her energy is amazing. She's so just great at what she does. But I wanted to talk about your disability for a minute. Like
Mhm.
when I met you, I never thought that you had a disability, that you would have one. You're so, I mean, people who with disability are they're normal to their restraints, but maybe not to the world at large, because we talked off air about DEIB and how
Mhm.
diversity and inclusion and belonging, but there's not a lot about this people who have disabilities. What is the disability that you have? And I think you did share with me that your father was born with the same disability, correct?
Yes. So it's called Holter-Ram syndrome,
Yeah.
which it's a genetic difference which results in upper limb differences and heart. malformation, so like hole in the
Yeah.
heart.
Oh, wow.
And so yeah, my dad also had the same disability. And it was for me to even say the name of it to you today is massive growth for me because I don't
Wow.
think I said the name out loud until 2 months ago.
Interesting. Why was that?
Because I didn't, first of all, it's a label, right?
Okay.
And it's a label that um, was only ever used in my presence as a negative growing up. It was only in
Mhm.
medical situations. It was only in differentiating me from my peers if I needed accommodations. It was the thing that made my life harder, right? So I spent my entire life pretending it didn't exist. If I just don't acknowledge it, if I don't talk to, like when I say I didn't talk about it, like my best friends knew it was a no go topic. So the only people
Mm.
that I would speak about it with were my family, and it was because it was my shield. And right, I thought if I don't acknowledge the differences, then they don't exist, and then I'll just fit in like everybody else.
Mm. And clearly you do not fit in because you're so different in how you think and how you show up to the world. And one thing I've noticed about you is that you're so authentic and very transparent in where you're at, how you're feeling. I think that's what people want to evolve to in today's
Mm-hmm.
society because like you said, when you address, your vulnerability with your peers, they were dealing with the same symptoms or the same challenges. And so now you're in a new space of being more connected to self. Was that the
Mm-hmm.
turning point that led you and say, you know what, I got to get out of this world of this career, this corporate environment to go to a more spiritual space to find my soul purpose?
Yeah, so I've always been an intuitive person and I've always been into spirituality,
Yeah.
but I couldn't live in that world and practice law, right? The two were
Yeah.
just totally disconnected. So I had two versions of myself and I incorporated those elements obviously in my day to day, which made me good at my job because I
Yeah.
was able to maintain balance for the most part and call in the right clients because, I incorporated those tools. But the catalyst for me was when I lost my dad last year in October. And at his funeral, everybody was relaying their stories and experiences with him and about how him having a disability and him being an outlier to his generation. He was a baby boomer, right? So when he was born, he was taken from his parents. They wanted to put him in an asylum. His mom didn't see him for 3 days. They had to demand to get him back. He grew up Catholic. The Catholic Church didn't want him at church, didn't want him going to school. Like his parents fought for him, and then he became a judge. Right? He was a total outlier, and he was an advocate for people with disabilities. So listening to people relay that to me at his funeral was a really pivotal moment for me because I thought my dad's been a mentor to me from a legal perspective and just as a father,
Mhm.
but I'm supposed to do more with this similarity that him and I have. I'm supposed to tell our story. And by
Mm.
telling our story, I'll be able to help other people. And so that was about a year ago. And that was the turning point for me where I realized I had to be doing something different than what I was doing.
Yeah, and I think that was his way to give you the intuitiveness, the nudge, and say, "Baby girl, it's
Mhm.
time. I need you
Mhm.
to take this to a whole nother level." And it's beautiful when you can listen in because a lot of times, especially when we're grieving a loss, it's hard to listen, right? It's hard to be connected to things outside of us, or within ourselves that can transform outside of ourselves. But for you, you were able to stay present to answer the call. And now we're here today talking about it. So if you can, what did that look like when you got the nudge to know, like, okay, I know I have to do something different. I have to do something more. I know I'm just as different as my dad was, and I have true power to make a difference. How did you go about moving into that space? Because I think a lot of people struggle with that. Like, okay, I mastered this part of my life, my career, but I'm so empty inside. I know I want to do something different. What was your action steps to get you into? you knowing like this is what you wanted to do?
So I started to hear my dad.
Mm,
So when I say it was always spiritual and intuitive, like I would use tools to get guidance and I would tune in, but I started to actually audibly hear him and I started to get guidance from my guides. And I've always turned to that part of my life during really hard times. Like that's when I've really leaned in. And so what that looked like for me was I started to take care of myself. So I
mm,
started to work with people who could help me. I started to follow my mentors and I started to sit in silence
mm,
and listen to the parts of myself and see the parts of myself that I had been avoiding. Because what I realized was everybody talks about alignment, right? I want to be aligned. I want to increase my vibration. I want to manifest. But what I learned was you cannot achieve true alignment until you're able to show the world all the parts of yourself. And you can't do that until you can see them yourself.
mm. Hold on, let's sit on that for a minute. Dropping in,
Yeah.
higher yourself, dropping
Right.
in. Hold on. Can you say that again, please?
Yes. So yes.
So good.
So you can't obtain alignment, right? Spiritual alignment until you're able to show up and show all parts of yourselves. And you can't show that part until you're able to see that part and hear that part and honor it, right? You can't show up for
Mm,
the world as a whole if you're not showing up for yourself that way. We're all
mm.
just pretending.
Yeah. Wow. And how did you go about showing yourself that you found out about or knew about that you was hiding from to the world? What did that look like? Because I know people listening in that's going to watch this and listen to this, they're going like, well, what are the tools and what does it look like? Because people are always into the how, right?
Mhm.
So what was that for you?
So I was so disconnected from my body that like I resented being different. So that looked like,
Mm.
like I would avoid mirrors. I would, I like taking a photo shoot for me. My first photo shoot was like jumping out of an airplane without a parachute. Like the amount of fear that I had behind those things being actually seen, not hiding anymore. And like the hiding is a joke for the most part because it's a visible difference, but I was hiding myself. So I started to do the things that were hard. I
Mm.
started to I started to honor the parts that I thought were different and reframe how I thought about it, right? So my whole life I'm like, it sucks. Life's been harder. It's been harder that I'm different. And then when I started to think about all of the things that I have acquired in my life because I'm different, I realized that the one thing that I didn't want to talk about is the one thing that's always given me the loudest voice,
Mm. Wow.
right? It's the thing that made me tenacious. It's as a little kid, I was problem solving with teachers so that I could be included with my peers. It was having the strength to speak out when I wasn't being treated fairly. And that has led me down this path. But being able to actually connect the dots, that really took me sitting with myself and thinking, what are the parts of me that I hate? What are the parts of me
Mm.
that I continue to loathe? And I need to start giving them attention and learning to love those parts of myself.
Yeah, because I believe that's when true wholeness comes in, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because like you said, you're not complete until you can complete the incomplete parts of yourself, right?
Mm-hmm.
The parts you don't show to the world, the parts no one knows about, the thing you do that no one when no one's looking, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
embrace and say, you know what? It's okay. It's okay to embrace your shadow self, to embrace your
Mm-hmm.
fears and insecurities and like you said, just going to mirrors and being seen. And that was hard for you. It's hard for a
Mm-hmm.
lot of us. It's hard for
Mm-hmm.
people to get on a podcast and speak their truth and their vulnerability. So I commend that you've done that and you've been in this space of evolving. For you, I want to get more into like Lindsey's spiritual practice and
Mm-hmm.
intentionality. What does that look like for you on a day-to-day basis? How do you get into that space?
Yeah, so for me, and I think I heard this on one of your podcasts,
Yeah.
showering for me is like the portal. to
Ah,
connecting with, and it always
yeah.
has been my whole life. So hearing you say that, it was
Yeah.
really cool because I don't know anybody else that does that.
Yeah.
But I always start my day with a shower and I clean my energy, right? I
Mhm.
picture detaching all energy that's not mine. I always intentionally call back any power or energy that I've lost.
Mm.
And then I picture myself my protecting my own energy, right?
Wow.
And I connect. That's when I connect with my guides. I connect with my dad and angels. I believe in all of it, and I just have a little conversation. And I ask them to show me who I need to be that day, what I need to say, who I should talk to, and ask them to help me get out of my own way, right? Use,
Yeah.
yeah.
And it's so interesting, right? I've been thinking a lot about it's just, okay, in most of life,
Mhm.
there's love and there's money, right? We put these things on a pedestal. And then there's this part of life, spirituality, where it's for some people now it's more like open and people more vulnerable in that space. But it's, probably the last 3 decades or more, religion has been like spirituality to a degree. But what I'm learning is the way people talk about it now is more freeing. Where I used to think, because I found out earlier this year that I have all these spiritual gifts, like psychic gifts,
Mhm.
clairsentient, clairvoyant, audio, like what? And I thought, like, when things are coming to me, I'm like, what is this? So for you to say that, I'm pretty sure there's people listening and who will watch this, you think like, yeah, that intuition, that discernment, that knowing, that's a gift that we should
Mhm.
listen in and lean into more because it'll help you in your day-to-day life, help others that you don't even know. And yeah, like you said, taking a shower is such a portal of cleansing your energy, opening your energy field, um,
Mhm.
you getting more clear on what it is you want to do for the day. So you do the shower, you connect to your spirit guides, you connect to your father and, everything in between, angels. Now what happens on a day to day? Once you get out of the shower, you put on your clothes, whatever, you start your day. What does your day look like? Like, are you a person who prays a lot? Do you meditate? Like, what else happens beyond that realm?
Yeah, so I definitely meditate and tap in every day.
Yeah. Okay.
And that could be a form of guided meditation. It's whatever I'm feeling. Perhaps it's a form of prayer. I have a conversation, right? And I listen and then I do the things that I'm being told. Because
Mm,
I think that when you start listening and following the steps, that's when the connection gets stronger because you become confident in that relationship, right? It started like I would ask for signs, right? So, one of my major mentors, and she doesn't know that she's my mentor, but Gabby Bernstein, I just absolutely adore,
yeah,
and
Gabby's amazing. Yeah.
I love her. And she talks about always asking for a sign if you're looking for guidance from the universe, right? So before I had this more clear contact, I would ask for signs before making decisions, right? If I'm supposed to do this, show me a white owl, and I would do it in a very like safe container in my head, not out loud because I didn't want to
Mhm.
trick my phone algorithms into showing
Yeah.
up, right? So I would ask for those signs and then I would follow them. And if I didn't get the sign, that was the universe redirecting me. And now when I hear a yes or no, I stop questioning it. Like I'm past the point in my life where if I meet someone and something feels off, I'm not going to try and convince myself from a people pleasing perspective to give them another chance or look
Mhm.
past it. If it's no, it's no, and that's
Mhm.
okay,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, and I think trust is the most important ingredient anyone can
Hmm.
have and within their life, their relationships, their business partnerships, how they go out in the world. Because I feel like outside of the flesh, what you have the most is your trust in life, your trust in yourself. And I remember for years, I didn't trust life. I just trusted myself. So I wouldn't allow anybody to do anything for me. So what that block was my receivership, because I just wanted
Mm-hmm.
to do everything. But trusting that voice, that inner voice, trusting your intuition and listening. And I also think it's powerful that we shouldn't have to give a person another chance to prove that they're right from what we're seeing. And I think, people mess up, people make mistakes. I'm like, yeah, but why are we allowing ourselves to embrace something that we know is a big no for us? It's a big no. People are questioning because they do want the answers, but the answers are within.
They are.
They're all within. And we get so disconnected because of social media, mass media, what our friends think, our peers. But I think it's about, what do you think? Right? Because
Mm-hmm.
when you have to leave your corporate environment, you have to think, okay, what do I really want from my higher self? And what does my higher self want from me? And then how do I take a step into that space? Can you speak on, like, for you, when you're working with a client or you're working with individuals on connecting within themselves, what is a process that you would probably take them through, or something you would kind of make them aware of to get to the side that they need to be in?
It depends because it's private coaching. It depends on
Yeah.
what the person's really struggling with, right? And how far along this spiritual path that they are.
Yeah.
But I think the starting point is, people are coming because they're looking for more. They're coming because they're not happy. And the starting point is figuring out what is it that's really making you unhappy, right?
Mm.
Right? What part of your body's being triggered? What are the external triggers that are causing this discomfort, and really like getting comfortable in the discomfort? Because if we can't pin down what the thing is that's making you unhappy, then we can't move forward, right? So yeah, so that looks like honest conversations, some meditation, breath work. And then from there, it's this ongoing communication because the triggers are going to keep coming up, right? And then including spiritual tools as they feel good for people. Like I know for me, I pull cards every day. I don't know
Oh,
if
you
you're a
do?
card puller. I
Oh,
love my
wow.
cards.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I pull cards. Yeah.
Yeah, love them. So those kind of things. And then one of the things that I had heard very audibly from my dad was I was asking for all these signs, right? Should I do this? Should I do that? And I heard him say to me, I asked him for a blue butterfly because it was something that he had shown me previously. And I was making this big decision. And I said, Dad, show me a blue butterfly. And I heard him say to me in his tone and sarcasm, just like he would if he were here, Lindsey, you need to stop seeking external validation. You have all of the answers,
Mm.
but fine, I'll send you one more blue butterfly. And I
Wow.
got that butterfly, but then after that, it was like, no, stop. You got to start listening to yourself.
Hmm.
But I
Yeah.
think through the coaching piece, you need that validation, right? Like as you start gaining momentum, you need somebody to validate your intuition and the path you're on.
Yeah. Because I think that the challenge is, like, for me, in any aspect of when I was getting downloads or knowing
Hmm.
things that I shouldn't know, I'm like, is this true? Because why do I know this? How do I know this? And why am I responsible for, like, this information?
Right.
But you need healers, teachers. Like, I have energy healers, I have astrologers, I have so many people that help me understand the concept of my vessel, what's coming through. Not to confirm, to validate, yes, but to know I'm on the right path. Now, we was talking offline yesterday. You said you spoke, right? And I want to talk a little bit about the healing piece within life, right? You got women, you got men, and what really raised my eyebrows with you is that you really spoke on men wanting to
Hmm.
heal and evolve, and I haven't heard that from a woman ever in the way that you speak on it. What brings you into the space of wanting men to heal themselves and be better? And you said you spoke last night as well. Can you speak on that?
Yeah, so I mean, this is going to be controversial, but that's okay. I I don't love the women empowerment groups that only support women. I've
Mm,
never felt aligned with them.
yeah.
And the reason for that, I think, is because I've never found a place in that. Like, speaking candidly, it's never been women that have helped raise me up in my life,
Mm,
in my career. I think that a lot of women, especially high achieving women, because it's often harder to advance, we are wired to compete.
that's good.
So I think that it is hard for women to truly celebrate the success of other women without jealousy, because that's been my experience. I have had female bosses who have complimented me in one breath and then teared me down in the next, who have felt threatened by my success. And and that's been my experience. And even in my personal life, I've had a lot of really beautiful men who've wanted nothing but for me to succeed and have celebrated along with me and who have this depth within them, but they don't have a community to reach out to like women do.
Mm,
You know, even my dad, he had pendulums and crystals and like,
hmm
you know, and was secretive about it. I remember when I was a kid seeing one of his pendulums being like, "Dad, what's that?" And that he like silently practiced his spirituality. And even my brother, you know, I talk to them all about these things and they're like, we don't have a group to go to,
Yeah.
you know, and they end up either emoting on their own or have no safe place to really dive into those emotions. And I've always really connected with men, even in my practice as a lawyer. Like when I
Mhm.
announced that I was leaving law, it was my male clients that were the most emotional.
I don't think I know as men, the biggest thing, but most people, the reason we're not good at expressing our thoughts and feelings is because the paradigm or the perception that, okay, you're weak, right? We don't want to be
Mm-hmm.
weak as masculine men. You don't want to be weak. Two, we don't have the program or the conditioning to cultivate that space in a healthy way where it makes sense to us and the women that
Mm-hmm.
we might be dating or sisters, mom. And then three, we don't want to be judged.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not crying in front of a woman. You crazy? It's like, but why not? Because I'm a man. I gotta hold it. And there's conversations where you keep everything to yourself. You don't tell your woman anything. And I'm like, okay, I get it, but what you mean you don't tell your woman anything that you're going through emotionally and mentally? And I
Mm-hmm.
think talking to you a few weeks ago and me going through, there's a documentary, people listening, watching. It's called The Work, and
Mm-hmm.
it's on Amazon Prime. And it's about prison inmates and outsiders come in, they come together, a select group, and they go through this process of letting go their emotions and being vulnerable. And a lot of these men are so in so much pain for all the suppression of years. And like when they're crying or actually screaming, like they're letting their beast out or their anger because it's been so suppressed that they can't even control it. And this is why I
Mm-hmm.
think the world is the way it is, at least from a men's perspective, we don't know what it's like to be emotional and be vulnerable and be transparent and be clear. Or where I come from, you express yourself, you're judged. Oh, come on, don't ever see you sweat. Be a man, pull your pants up, like all these things, right? So I honor you that you want to create a container for men, women as well. It does bring a very concern to me that I'm thinking about it that it
Mm-hmm.
is no space or place where men can go to just talk about their emotions and their feelings. And then you get some women's group who are like, I want a man like this and I want a man like that. And I'm like, yeah, but then ask yourself who's raising these men? Probably their
We're leaving,
moms.
we're leaving them behind.
Yeah.
Look, of course, women empowerment groups, there's a place for that. And
Yeah,
I
for sure.
appreciate the foundation for why they were created, but I just think there also needs to be a container where men feel safe. And when I did my talk last week, it was the men. Of course, I connected with the women as well, but what what really took me back was that it was the men afterwards that were coming up to me and saying things to me like, I see your soul.
They say there's so many books on it. Men want respect and women want love. I believe men really want peace and women want intimacy.
Hmm.
How can you be intimate with a man if you don't understand his pain, or you're not programmed to understand it, or he's not programmed to express himself, to tell you where he's at,
Hmm.
to get that connection. Um, but yeah, it's a journey, right, for all of us. But I think if we can be open to change, be open to listening and accepting a person for who they are, where they are, and not having this expectations how they should be. And granted, like I love women, and I think what's happened is that women got all that power. So no woman or man has ever seen a woman in her full power because women has been suppressed most
Right.
of life. So I
Right.
think women are even trying to understand their power that they have in the universe now. And even some men are even accepting it or trying to control it, but their nervous system is not used to it. So everyone is just even clashing or they don't have no true alignment in it. So it's an interesting space we're in. And I think this is why you, me, people of our genre of work, we got to help each other.
And I
Like,
think we're all imbalanced. Like at the end of the
yeah,
day, like as a woman in the corporate world, like
yeah,
my masculine and feminine energy was totally out of whack. Like I
yeah,
resided most of the time in my masculine energy. So,
yeah.
right? So the doing all the time. And so transitioning into this world, really relearning the feminine energy of like, I'm just gonna like I'm gonna let things happen. I'm gonna trust the masculine energy of the universe to hold me in this space and help me propel forward. Like I think that's women need to relearn that, right? And men need to get comfortable with their feminine energy.
And my aunt had sent me a video probably like 2 months ago. It was on Instagram, and it was about the masculine and the feminine energy. And
Hmm.
she's very independent in her own regard, and she has corporate. She does well. They was asking a young lady like, "Is a woman a man because she wants all these things?" Right? What they was really getting to is that to want more in life there is going to be some type of output, which is masculine. You have to do more. There's nothing wrong with that. Like, says some women who want more things, so they're willing to do the work. If women want more, is it because of the masculine and they seen that for so many years as a blueprint of what they should have, right? Like if women for centuries and times just seeing men getting all this power, all this money, all this just prestige and like, of course they want what they want, but is it just a reflection of what they saw this entire time? That's why they want it now, right? And
Yeah.
then there's something that Jordan Peterson talks about, because he talks about equality, like equal pay and things of that, which I agree. Like if a woman is great at a job, she should get the job. It shouldn't be about gender roles, right?
Hmm.
But then he was saying women want equal pay only when it's in a position of power. And I was just like, oh, that's interesting. He said, think about truck drivers or building skyscrapers. I don't think women want those jobs, right? So it was
Hmm.
just fascinating how he broke it down. It made me think. But more importantly, what I'm saying is that unconsciously, like you said, we're in balance. We're doing what we think we should do. We don't really know because we're not fully integrated into our wholeness because of how the masculine structures was created in at least in America on what to be, how to show up. So, but I think you need both. And as a woman, being a woman is a superpower because a strong feminine energy is where things are manifested through because you can have child, right? So without that, they say the subconscious is feminine and the conscious is masculine, but that's why the masculine and the feminine energies are needed. But in your life and within your practice, from keynote speaking to helping people get to their higher self and healing, what is a commonality that you're aware of that's happening most that's keeping people even stuck or just in this space of just not evolving or changing? What is that common thing that you're seeing within the world?
I think that there's too much complacency. I think
Mm,
that I think that there's Like one of the things that I've always done is I research the heck out of everything. Like I am constantly learning.
Yeah.
If I don't know the answer, I want to find it. If I'm feeling a certain way, I want to tap in deeper. And I think that where people are so disconnected and they're so comfortable continuing on this hamster wheel because they're not motivated enough to find the answer. Like I think it's part of it is laziness,
Mhm.
but I think mostly people are just so exhausted
There it
trying
is.
to keep up with their day to day that they don't have time or
Mm,
energy to stop and find the answers, right? Because they got bills to pay. We live in this crazy economy.
yeah.
Two income homes aren't enough to put food on the table. I don't know what it's like in the States, but in Canada, the cost of groceries is
Mhm.
obscene. So people that keeps them stuck.
Think about it. The more you work, the less you can really manifest things. Because how
Yes.
can you manifest things when you're always working? I
Hmm.
was like, damn, that's so unique. And then I started thinking, when I rest, I manifest. The biggest things that's come into my life is when I'm not doing anything, not when I'm out trying to get everything done. And my challenge is that I was so afraid to be still and listen and deal with what I'm really feeling or supposed to feel in my body so it doesn't control my emotions or control me in a way where I'm just running from it. But it says a lot about just presence, stillness, silence, like you said earlier, how we can go within and advocate those wounds that we're not looking at to help us get to the next side of life. But if we're always working, we're always doing, we're always giving and not being, we can't really evolve or heal. And I think that's why I think the world is calling for more light workers like yourself
Hmm.
to open up containers and hold space for people to feel safe, to just really just relax. Like, can we just have a day? I believe there should be one day well, 1 week in the entire world, everything is just shut off and we don't do
I
anything,
agree. I
right?
agree.
Like, oh, just have a day. Don't do nothing for a day. That should be a world day of nothingness.
Right.
But we haven't been programmed because of that, and it's a lot of fear underlining the constant work and the rat race. What is three things that you can give the audience, people listening, that they can do right now if they're in a rut mentally or emotionally, and they just want to get up to get a fresh breath of air. They just want to breathe again. Like, what is some tools you can give them that can benefit them?
Yeah, so I think that people overcomplicate all of this, right? I think we
Yeah.
overcomplicate spirituality and mindfulness because we think, oh, I don't have time. I don't have time
Right.
to learn how to meditate
It's so
or,
true.
right? Or it's I've got 1,000 thoughts going on, so I'm going to try and meditate for 5 minutes, but 2 minutes into the meditation, my mind goes off in a different direction. So I've failed at meditation, so I'm not going to try it again,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I think, like I said, most people shower in the morning before they go to work. While you're in the shower, think of how you want your day to unfold.
Mm,
That is an easy, you all have time, everybody's got time for that, right? I also think people underestimate the power of moving your body as simple
mm,
as walking. If you're
yeah.
able to walk, that for me, walking's very meditative. And that was one of the things that, my coach gave me permission to be like, you don't need to run 5 miles, go for a walk. And when I really started to lean into that, that's when things would come to me, the walking, right? Being
Mm,
in nature, being outside. And then I think before you close your eyes at night, like get off your phone, just put your phone down, turn off the TV, and we all have 5 minutes before we fall asleep with our eyes closed, where we can tap in again, right? Where we can talk to our higher self, guides and say, like if there's any message or anything I need to know, a lot of it comes to you in the middle of the night, right? A lot
yeah.
of
It
it
does.
comes to you while you're
Does.
sleeping,
It does.
right? And those are missed opportunities.
Yeah. Presence, right? Like again, like you
Mm-hmm.
said, slowing it down,
Mm-hmm.
meditation walks, being present with self at night. listening to the listening as you're in the shower, asking empowering questions like, how do I get out of this? Or how do I and just
Hmm.
really sit with the question and let the answer come through without you trying to force it.
Hmm.
Before we get off here, I do want to touch bases and circulate some energy around a disability space because outside looking in, I don't know what it's like to be disabled, right? So to people listening and just in general, what is something people can be mindful of for people in the disability community or just people in general? Because I told you a few weeks ago, I had a young lady reach out to me and she was looking for a job
Hmm.
and she couldn't get a job because of her disability. And I was like, damn, like I didn't know what to say other than like, oh, here's a link, check this out. But how can we be more mindful and how can we share space and just open up to people who are disabled and accept them as because they are human, right? And not
Hmm.
just put them in this space of like you're an outsider because of your disability. Because I think, like you said, that would make anyone feel like they can't talk about what they have and they just want to be normal.
Yeah, so I think like as a starting point, the next time you go to work on Monday or you're at an
Yeah.
event, look around the room and see how many people with visible disabilities are present. It's usually zero. So
Yeah.
I've gone to some networking events recently, and as far as I can tell, and I appreciate there's non-visible illnesses and disabilities, but in terms of like physical and visible ones, usually there's not a representation in the crowd, and it's because people are concerned about accessibility. So I think just being conscious and really considering all people when you're planning events or at your place of work, because the accommodations are usually easy ones, and just asking the question, right? Like
Yeah.
if you're putting out an ad for a job and you're looking for candidates or you're planning an event, ask the question. Put right on the form if you require any sort of accommodation or special request for accessibility. Like that question's not even posed 99% of the
Ah,
time,
yeah, that's great awareness. I never thought about that. Yeah.
right? And
Um,
it's so easy, and but I think that people are afraid to be offensive, right? So they don't want to ask questions that could be perceived as offensive. But I think that when you come at it from a place of kindness, and the intention behind it is we want to be
mhm.
inclusive, then that makes all the difference, right?
Yeah.
And I think, people with disabilities are discriminated against. Like I certainly didn't get hired for jobs that I should have been hired for, and I know that because I was overqualified for those jobs. So, and that's why I worked harder and made my own job, and I didn't,
Yeah.
and I was successful. But I think that it's a missed opportunity, because the thing that people without disabilities don't realize is someone who is born with a disability or has acquired one will bring to your place of work or your group a different skill set that is invaluable.
Mm, wow. That's
It
so
is right. It's problem solving skills that others haven't thought about. It is tenacity,
hmm.
because we've had to work harder. It needs to be a greater part of the conversation when we're talking about inclusivity, because it's not currently. And it's
Yeah.
2024, so it should be.
Yeah, and it's and I'll be transparent because even me asking the questions, I felt in my body like, damn, should I say this question like this? And I'm so glad you acknowledged it and you said it because I felt this when I first got introduced to the mental health space,
Mhm.
right, as an advocate. And then I experienced people who had like, panic attacks or people who really suffer from depression. And I told myself, I'm not going to let this be a stigma. We're going to talk about suicide prevention. We're going to talk about
Mhm.
mental health. We're going to talk about mental health awareness. And so now I want to break the mold within myself to be able to talk to any disabled person with love and kindness and not have that apprehensive, reluctant, energy when I'm speaking because just speak to me, right?
Mhm.
Don't put it nowhere. Don't put it on a pedestal. Don't put it beneath you. Just speak to it. And I think that alone is enough for people to say, just be mindful and just look around. And thank you for speaking on it. I think it's just so important for us to hold space in the DEIB world of belonging. Like, because when I spoke at, the Cannes Lion last summer, I didn't see no disabled people there. I didn't see no one speaking about disability within the
Mhm.
influencer market, social media, pop culture, mental health. They don't talk about it.
Mhm.
You don't even look for it. So I
Right.
appreciate you saying, and I think it is time for all these things to be talked about and shed some light on for the benefit of everyone.
Yeah.
So we want to get into the energy of Lindsey. Where can we find you? How do we work with you, and how do we get to know more of what you do on a day to day?
Yeah. So, I mean, the easy one is to go to my website,
Yeah.
which is it's lindseymazza.com, and I've got an Instagram page.
Mm-hmm.
My link's there as well. And yeah, in terms of working with me, I do the spiritual coaching. I
Mm-hmm.
also have a consulting part of my business for inclusivity because I think corporations need to hire somebody like me so
Yes.
that I can show them a different way of thinking because it's such a missed opportunity. And I think, like I said, it is the one minority group that is really not present.
Yeah.
So,
True.
right. And that's how, as a company owner, that's how you stay ahead of the game and that's how you expand and you call in a wider demographic as well, right? So, and then the keynote speaking, they're all on my website. Keynote speaking is I love it all, but that's really my passion because I love to be able to talk to a group of people and really kind of through my story turn what they think the journey of somebody with a disability is on its head.
Yeah.
Because I think by sharing, I think we all have stories to share and people learn from them just through our honesty and vulnerability. So yeah, that's where you can find me and all of the things that I do. And you can book discovery call with me and I'm happy to connect with people further.
Yes. People listening, connect, get in there, talk to Lindsey. Lindsey, before we leave, can you give us some empowering, motivational, inspirational, influential words to the people listening? I know you have some for us. We would love that.
I think just, going back on what I had said about really being able to tap in and look at the parts of ourselves that we're afraid to look at, because once you sit with yourself and you look at those parts, that's where your superpower lies. And that's for me, that's what it was. It was, this disability has actually been my superpower. And we've all been given these differences or things that we perceive as weaknesses to actually teach us.
Mm-hmm.
And then by us learning, then we can teach other people. So I think we should all be on the journey to find what our superpowers are because that helps us show up in the world in the best way for us and for other people.
So it is. Mic drop.
Mhm.
Can we get an amen? Hallelujah. Lindsey, thank you. Thank you. This was
Thank you.
incredible. People share, subscribe, like this episode. Tell a friend to tell a friend. And please follow Lindsey because she has so much more to say. We're out. Spiritual Fitness Podcast. Talk to you guys soon. Peace.